It's midnight in Paris. I'm Marco, and these are the main world news headlines from France 24. The European Union is raising the alarm over the coronavirus pandemic, saying it's worse now than at the March peak in several of the 27 states, as governments in Europe and beyond reimpose drastic measures. France today recording its highest one-day spike in infections, over 16,000 new cases. Donald Trump greeted with jeers and boos as he visited the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's flag-draped coffin in Washington, lying in state, the first woman ever granted this honour. The president has sparked further outcry by refusing to say whether he'll respect the result of the vote of the upcoming election if he loses. French prosecutors open an inquiry into the banking giant BNP Paribas of claims of complicity in crimes against humanity, genocide and torture in Sudan. This is live from Paris. Thank you for being with us. Let's give you the latest on COVID-19 in France. A new grim record, 16,000 new cases. The Prime Minister Jean Castex says if France doesn't act to stop the rise in COVID infections, the country will end up in a similar situation to that of March this year. Meanwhile, the EU is already warning that the COVID-19 situation is worse than that peak period. Health Commissioner Stella Kyriakides says that's the outlook in several of the 27 member states. The death rate hasn't returned to the levels seen earlier this year, but new infections are soaring once again, prompting the bloc's disease control agency to flag 7 countries of high concern. Spain and several eastern states have been seeing an increased proportion of hospitalized and severe cases among elderly people and rising death notification rates. France has tightened its measures, closing restaurants, workplaces and gyms, as businesses already hammered by the earlier lockdown struggle to stay afloat. Here at France 24, Brian Quinn has this report starting in Germany.
Marienplatz, the symbolic heart of Munich, where face masks are now mandatory. Among residents and visitors, mixed feelings.
Ist auf der einen Seite schon eine gute Sache, weil doch die Infektionszahl immer höher wird.
Finde ich jetzt schon ein bisschen extrem irgendwie.
Europeans may be experiencing coronavirus fatigue after months of distancing measures, but as the continent passes the grim milestone of more than 5 million COVID-19 cases, the European Commission says renewed discipline is necessary to avoid another round of nationwide lockdowns.
We are at a decisive moment. It might be our last chance to prevent a repeat of last spring.
Among new stricter measures announced this week, in the Italian region of Campania around Naples, face masks must be worn everywhere at all times. In the UK, with some 42,000 deaths, Europe's hardest hit country, it's table service only at pubs and bars, which must now close at 10 p.m. Since the pandemic's arrival, Sweden has bucked conventional wisdom, counting on voluntary prudence among its citizens instead of lockdowns and mask requirements. Now, amid a worrying rise in new cases, the government says it's ready to take necessary steps, but not just yet.
Hamnar vi I ett läge där smittspridningen fortsätter att öka, då kommer vi inte heller att tveka en sekund att vidta ytterligare restriktioner. Jag hoppas att det inte ska vara nödvändigt.
Virus cases are also on a troubling rise in Spain, where authorities have called on urgent help from the military to help fend off a second wave.
Civic leaders and business owners in Marseille have reacted angrily this Thursday to the closure of bars and restaurants, saying they hadn't been consulted by the French government, which ordered these measures to contain the upsurge in COVID-19 cases there. Here at France 24, Monty Francis has this.
Along Marseille's Old Port, new coronavirus restrictions are being met with outrage. After enduring a 2-month lockdown last spring and ongoing safety measures, the citizens of Marseille are fed up.
C'est quoi? Qu'est-ce qu'on nous veut? Voilà, qu'est-ce qu'on nous veut? C'est la crise, c'est la galère. Marseille est une ville pauvre. Eh ben, on va l'appauvrir encore plus.
Faut arrêter ces sanctions. Ça y est, on morfle assez comme ça. Ça suffit. C'est dur ce qu'on vit là en ce moment, on comprend rien.
Starting Saturday in Marseille and neighboring Aix-en-Provence, restaurants and bars are being forced to shut down for at least 2 weeks. Government officials say the measures are needed to curb rocketing COVID-19 rates in both cities. Marseille's mayor reacted angrily on Twitter, expressing anger and astonishment, saying the move was the result of political decisions that no one can understand. She requested a delay of 10 days for the restrictions to go into effect, which the health minister categorically denied. Restaurant owners say they have already bared much of the burden since the start of the pandemic. Many consider the measures unfair.
Mes frigos, ils sont pleins pour le week-end. Ils ont fait fermer demain soir. Donc qu'est-ce que je fais avec ça? Est-ce que c'est M. Macron qui va me rembourser les pertes?
In the meantime, the president of the region of Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur has announced he's filing a legal challenge to the new restrictions.
The US president jeered and booed as he paid his final respects to an American icon. The scenario of the Supreme Court took even the biggest critics of Donald Trump by surprise. As the US president came to stand before the flag-draped coffin of the late Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg, those gathered showed their feelings about Trump, and you could hear the chants. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the first woman to be given the honor of lying in state in the Capitol. Her dying wish was that the winner of the presidential election in November should be the one that names her successor, a wish that Donald Trump is ignoring. Meanwhile, the president has provoked a storm of criticism by refusing to say if he will step aside and respect the result of November's election if he loses. And if he doesn't do that, that would be something unprecedented in US history. Ketevan Gorgistani is in Washington. She explained more about this.
Well, this happened last night in a press conference where a reporter asked him, Mr. President, do you commit to a peaceful transition of power no matter what? Was implied, of course, whether he loses or not. And Donald Trump has said things that are similar in the past. This time he said, we will have to see. He did not commit to that peaceful transition of power. And that has triggered a huge backlash, of course, coming from Democratic leadership, from liberal figures, but also, which has to be noted because it doesn't happen that often, also a sort of muted criticism from Republican leadership. Now, the Republicans did not directly name Donald Trump or specifically criticize him, but they came out, like Mitch McConnell, for example, or Mitt Romney, they all came out to say and to make clear that there would be a peaceful transition of power, no matter what, that the results of that November 3rd election will be guaranteed, and that the president that the American people decide to elect on November 3rd will be the one who will be inaugurated at the end of January. The Republicans were usually quick to fall in line with everything that the president says, but this time they really were adamant that this was not how the United States had been working ever since the birth of the country. Some of them even going as far as saying that not committing to that peaceful transition of power could endanger the very basis of the American democracy.
The French bank BNP Paribas is under investigation over links to war crimes in Sudan. 9 Sudanese victims have filed criminal complaints against BNP. The allegation is that it acted as the central bank for the regime of Omar al-Bashir and, in doing so, allegedly facilitated crimes committed in Sudan between 2002 and 2008, especially in the region of Darfur. Here at France 24, Wasim Korne with this.
BNP Paribas facilitate crimes against humanity in Darfur in the early 2000s. Prosecutors in France have opened an inquiry into the matter after several people and organizations filed a complaint against the bank last year. The International Federation of Human Rights, the Human Rights League, and 9 Sudanese victims accuse BNP Paribas of having ignored the embargo that was in place at the time against the government of dictator Omar al-Bashir.
En juin 2014, la banque avait été soumise à une amende record de près de 9 milliards de dollars par le département de la justice américain pour avoir violé l'embargo et, selon la position du département de la justice à l'époque, agi au moins entre 2002 et 2008 comme une banque centrale de facto pour les autorités soudanaises.
At the time, the United States and other countries had declared an embargo against Sudan's government because of the numerous crimes against humanity that were being committed in war-torn Darfur. Since then, those crimes have been called a genocide, and the plaintiffs believe the link between the bank and that genocide is clear.
Tous les jours, on le voit et on en est témoin à la FIDH. Derrière les graves atrocités, derrière les crimes de masse, se cache souvent de l'argent et des capacités financières pour que des autorités ou des groupes non étatiques puissent perpétrer des crimes de cette ampleur.
BNP Paribas has said it has no information regarding the opening of a probe. The bank is already under investigation in the United States, where Sudanese refugees have also filed a complaint for similar reasons.
For more on that story, and of course all the world news, do stay with us. You're watching France 24.